Carol and Cheryl, Cheryl and Carol, Carol and Cheryl. Welcome back to Conversations with Carol and Cheryl. Today we're going to talk about self-forgiveness. And we are lucky to have Diane Bonilla with us today. You may remember her from prior episodes. Anxiety 101, Guiding Parents of Young Adults Coping with Pandemic Loss, and Alma Mater Advising. I've put these shows in our show notes. Feel free to check those out if you haven't already. Diane also has a Facebook page and a website, and those are also in the show description. Diane is a licensed professional counselor with over 25 years of clinical experience in both community mental health and private practice. She specializes in emotional regulation, stress management, work-life balance, caregiver self-care, grief, loss, and anxiety. Please join myself, Cheryl, and Diane, as the show is already in progress. Welcome back to the show, Diane.
Oh, it's so great to be back, you guys. I love connecting with both of you and talking about these different topics. It's great.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about forgiveness. Diane, why is forgiveness important?
If you think about it in terms of how it's going to impact you, if you hang on to something and you don't forgive yourself, we'll call it unforgiveness, right? So if you hang on to something, it's baggage, right? And you take that baggage with you in your relationships now and in the future. It affects your communication with people and your interactions with people. So if you don't take care of it, it's just going to keep accumulating.
Okay.
Another reason that I think it's important that we tackle self-forgiveness is that it's really harmful to us. If we hang on to this baggage, we don't forgive ourselves, it actually really does affect our mental health, our emotional health, and our physical health. And if you do like a quick little search, like even a Google search, you will see how many studies have been done that strongly support that. There's information out there that it harms our immunity, our heart health. It affects our sleep, stress hormones, and then mental health wise, it can impact anxiety, depression, nicotine use, drug use. So we need to get rid of our baggage. We need to figure out ways to forgive ourselves. So I have a little metaphor. If you're a swimmer, you might relate to this a little more. I was a competitive swimmer most of my life, swam D1 in college. So I hopefully enough people out there can relate to this. If you at least can swim, you'll relate to it. But if you can think of baggage like what you're wearing when you swim. So if you are at your best, and you're communicating well with people and all that, and if you're at your best for swimming, you are wearing your best racing suit because you're going to perform best in that. If you put on extra suits and practice suits, you're going to have resistance and drag, and you're not going to perform as well. If you put on layers of clothes when you jump in the pool, it's going to weigh you down. And eventually, if you take care of this stuff, if you don't take some of these layers off, you're going to be hanging on the wall. Maybe not, maybe even submerged. So it's just an example of how things can accumulate and really impact how you are in life, the ease that you have in life and the ease that you have in your relationships. A good example of baggage accumulation,
Why do you think it's so hard for people to do that for themselves?
Well, I think we're hardest on ourselves more than we are than the people we love, more than we are even to strangers. There's like a concept, exceptionalism, and we tend to think that we're the exception for forgiveness. We hold ourselves to these really high standards, almost like perfectionism in a way. And so it makes it really difficult to forgive ourselves. If it were somebody else, a child, an adult child, a spouse, whatever, we're much more willing to consider forgiveness. So I think that makes it hard. And then also confirmation bias. So that's when we're hyper focused on these negative things in our, like negative thinking almost. We're hyper focused on negative things about ourselves, negative beliefs about ourselves. And those beliefs support our not forgiving ourselves. We unconsciously reinforce the unforgiveness by the negative self-talk that we might engage with, within ourselves.
Can someone actually joke around about themselves in a negative way because they're confident? Or is that always a sign, not to go off the subject, or is that always a sign of self-depreciation or something like that?
I guess it just depends on the person and the situation. I mean, people do say there's an element of truth to sarcasm and jokes. So I think, I would want to know more about that, like that situation. Was it something that was happening all the time? I mean, and I think sometimes you can say something enough that you can begin to believe it. You can definitely hear something enough that you can begin to believe it, which is what, early trauma is all about. You hear, as a kid, you can hear something or see something or experience something enough, and you take that into your adulthood. So I don't know. What do you ladies think?
I've definitely learned this about myself, that I will do, like I call it a slow burn. I will, just take something and take it and take it and take it and take it. And then I reach a point of no return. But it's a long time. But once I reach that point of no return, I've got a clear conscience. I'm good. Because I know I've tried and I know I did everything I could. But I just wish I could condense that slow burn to a lot quicker. It's funny because I consider myself pretty forgiving with myself, because I will run it through a long time till I can't anymore. For me personally, I think it's kind of easy to self-forgive, but I haven't had too many big things to self-forgive.
Yeah. So what's most helpful to you?
Well, I had a family member that I think I just did everything for. I thought you were supposed to. Actually, it's my mom. I moved out of the house to move in with them. I took her places. I, got her things. I tried to be whatever. Everyone does that with their parents. But it's funny, when I was doing it, I was telling people, in conversation or whatever, and they would go, wow, that's really admirable of you. And I thought, I was taken back so many times that people were like, I'm not doing it, but it's great that you're doing it. And I thought, aren't you supposed to do that? Aren't you supposed to take care of your parents? And so then she betrayed me, I thought, which was pretty big. That was it for me. I felt like if you show somebody who you are and they still don't see you for what you are, then it's out of my hands. I can't do anything else. Right. So I felt like she didn't even know me. She didn't know what I was made of. She didn't know me, So I'm at peace with it. I've done everything I can.
Right. So you had a limit, and set a boundary when she had exceeded your limit, when you said
but it was like
betrayed you.
Years and years and years. I wish it was, but I guess the point is that what makes me feel good about it and I'm okay with it is that I did everything I could. Now, if I didn't do everything I could and I made that call or something, that would eat me up. So I think that's the difference. Maybe some people that are still, carrying that with them, they didn't get the chance where they felt they made things right, or they didn't get the chance to do everything they thought they could. So I guess in my life, I've been lucky enough to do everything I thought I could do for somebody, and that allowed me self-forgiveness. But it would be very, very hurtful to me if I thought I didn't get the chance.
Right, right. So that's, I mean, that takes loads of self-awareness on your part to process all that,
Mm.
you know, and time also to interact with somebody and figure all of that out. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, question about that. How would you begin to unpack the self-awareness piece? Like, do you journal? Do you talk to people about it? Because I think if it's just in your head, you're kind of doing a loop in your head and you're not really getting anywhere. So what is your recommendation for unpacking a situation where, let's say she didn't do everything she could and then something happened? Maybe her mom passed away and then you're left with that. How do you handle that?
Right, right. Okay, great. Well, I have this thing called the 4 Rs that help clients with these situations. But there's also some role play, I think, that somebody like in that situation could do. So we can talk about that too. But basically with the 4 Rs, it's taking responsibility, right? You're going to do an honest assessment of what you did or didn't do that impacted other people, and be honest with yourself. Take responsibility for your mistake. That's the beginning of unpacking. That can be just thinking about it. That can be with a therapist. That can be in a journal. I mean, there's lots of ways to do that. But then the next R would be repair. So you want to think about ways that you can repair any damage that's done, if that's possible. It's not always possible, but some kind of healing action that you can take to make it better. You know, you can't undo what you did, but you can try to take some steps to heal towards forgiveness. And that's going to look different for everyone. That's a very personal thing. And it can be done without the other person knowing. You can take healing steps. It just depends on, again, the situation. But I think the big thing where people get stuck, maybe what you were talking about, they sort of in that loop and stuff, it's, you know, after you get the lesson, then you need to release. And that's that 3rd R. It's release. You know, the whole idea is to get the lesson, get the wisdom from whatever it is that you did, then make changes, set boundaries with yourself, whatever the adjustment is. But you just want to hang on to the lesson, to the wisdom. Then the last R is release. Releasing your judgment of yourself and the other person, releasing any negative feelings like shame, anger, basically because we're imperfect. And this is where you really have to show yourself some kindness and some compassion. So it's take responsibility, repair what you can, receive the lesson, receive the wisdom, and then release all that other stuff. Release all the negative stuff. If you have trouble releasing, I actually have found this very helpful. I do this myself. If you can imagine somebody that you love very much, imagine somebody that you cared, deeply about, and imagine them coming to you with the same issue that you're struggling with internally. Imagine them coming to you, and what would you say to them? And really think about that. Like I won't just think like I'll go on a walk and I'll think about it. Say it out loud. Let yourself hear actually what you would be saying to this person, and then write it down and read it out loud. And then think about you saying that to yourself. And it's just extremely powerful. I mean, I have done it and been brought to tears of relief by it. It's very powerful. And I think if you can set aside the time to do it, it's very worth it. Because again, that sort of speaks to how we're hardest on ourselves. So we can kind of come up with that forgiveness for someone else much more easily. And then also when you're thinking back about when you're doing you're taking responsibility and kind of doing your assessment, at any given point in time, we are all doing our best with the resources we have. That's a NLP presupposition, neuro linguistic programming presupposition. So And that's even if the resources were there for you at the time you made this mistake or didn't do something, even if the resources were there, you weren't in a space to use them for whatever reason, you know? And so now you're looking back with the wisdom of everything that happened afterwards. So you really got to pull out that judgment and release it and just get the lesson from it. It's not really fair to judge yourself now with the wisdom you have now. Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I like to say also, to my other favorite NLP presupposition is there is no failure, only feedback. So, hey, you didn't fail. I mean, no matter how awful this was, you know, this is feedback for you about how to live your life now, because more than likely, maybe you can't undo what happened. So, you know, use it as feedback and move forward. Take the lesson with you. Don't leave all the other crap behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recently went on a bike trip with my sister-in-law. Well, I was sharing with her a regret that I had around my father, because he passed away last year, and we were talking a lot about him and a lot about his death and the family members and all that. And I just, you know, I had been carrying around this regret with me, and I shared it with her. And the regret was, one day we were driving to my sister's house to have lunch. And he said to me, "I'm dying." And I was really hurting because I knew he was dying. And I couldn't hold a space open for him to talk about it because it was too painful for me. And my reaction to him was, "Look, Dad, you know, you're alive today. So let's make the most of today. We're going to have a really great lunch. It's a beautiful day. Let's try to have some fun today." And that's the only reaction that I could have for him. But what I really wanted to say to him was, "Tell me more." Because I knew that he was afraid. And I knew that this was really bothering him because he didn't want to die and he was afraid of dying. But I just could not do it. And I just have been living with that since he passed away. And I just felt so bad. Like I just really wanted to be there for him. So when I shared that with my sister-in-law, this is where it was kind of looping in my head. I've been thinking about it. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. You know, she gave me the compassion that you're talking about. So I owned it. I felt responsible. And, you know, the healing for me was just moving on and trying to remember him, all the good things, and, you know, have nice memories of him. But the point is, she was super compassionate with me. She's like, "I think your response was perfect because you took him out of his fear and into the moment, and you guys had a great day together." And that's what he really needed in that moment. When she said that to me, I was able to release it and go, yeah, you know, if I turn it and look at it through another lens, this is okay. The way that it played out was just fine. And it's okay. I forgive myself. And I'm not sure what the lesson is. Maybe not be so hard on myself.
Yeah, that could very well be the lesson.
What you're saying, you know, we're so hard on ourselves. And I just wanted to be the perfect daughter and say all the right things and just be there for him. But I think in reality, I was maybe not perfect, but I was there for him in those days where he was afraid.
Yeah.
So
the other lens, I mean, that's so important, right? And that's really the role play of inviting, you know, imagining inviting somebody you care about that comes to you, sort of gives you that sense of another lens, you know, you offering forgiveness to them, but hearing it out loud, you know, it takes it outside of you. Well, I'm so glad you had that experience. I mean, there's so much relief that can be felt. And like you say, you've kept the lesson. You know, the lesson is that you were too hard on yourself.
Well, I think the other thing with self-forgiveness is, for me, I don't ever want to hurt another person. I don't want my actions or words to hurt somebody that I love. And of course, if you're in a relationship with somebody for a long time, you're going to hurt somebody, and I just feel so bad if I do that. So I have another story with my daughter. When she was little, my son would pick on her, and he was bigger than her. He would pick on her. And I did not want my mom role to be referee. I did not want to referee their fights, their picking on each other, because then they just seek attention from me by having this, it's like negative attention. So she came to me later and she's like, he picked on me and you never did anything about it. She said that to me, and I reflected on it, and I thought, wow, this is something I've hurt her. This is something I could have done better as a mom, and she was really hurt by this. So, I journaled about it and basically owned it and said, yeah, she's right. I could have done better, and I felt horrible. So when the time was right, much, much later, we were laying in bed and I said to her, I'm like, when you were little and your brother picked on you, I didn't stick up for you as much as I should have. And I feel really bad about that. And the key to this conversation, I think when you're trying to confront somebody or have the hard conversation, you want to leave out the word but. So if I had said to her, I could have done more, but I was tired from working all day, or, I didn't want to be referee. It's not received the same way as if you just say, I could have done better and I'm sorry. So I said that to her, and there was this really long pause that felt like forever. I'm like, oh my God, it was so awkward. And I'm just waiting and waiting for her response. And she really meditated on it because this bothered her. This was a pain point for her. And she said to me, she's like, Mom, don't worry about it. You are a good mom. Woo.
Aw.
And it did. It was a release right at that moment. Exactly what you're saying. Like, I just released it and she released it. And it was like taking off a bathing suit, taking off a practice suit, and I could swim faster,
We're skinny dipping.
Pretty much.
So that's so beautiful. I mean, acknowledging that when you, a younger mom at the time, you were working with the resources that you had, right? And so you're looking back and seeing where maybe you could have done better, and, owning it and then doing repair work by talking to her. You have the kind of relationship where you can do that, which is great. Being able to just get the lesson and move on, right? And not carry that baggage.
Did you say, can you kick just about anybody's ass right now? Yes, thank you.
Toughened her up, right?
It's so true. She recently shared a story with me. She was walking home from a ball game in San Francisco. So she's in downtown, but on the Embarcadero. And this really creepy guy starts throwing fruit chews at her. He's just throwing fruit chews, and they're pinging her. And she's just this tiny thing. So she turns around and she says to him, "Are you throwing fruit chews at me?" And he goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "Do you want to see how mean I can be?
That's funny.
Do you want to see how scary I can be?" And the guy just took off running.
Oh, that's awesome. Woo.
I'm sure she's thinking, I got a brother. I'm not afraid of you.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So it did come around, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
That's
That's
funny.
great. That's a wonderful story, though. And I think it's a great example of the healing process and just getting rid of that baggage and being healthy about it.
So how do we get into the space for forgiving ourselves? Do you have any strategies around that?
It has to start with reflection so that you can get into those 4 R's, taking responsibility and doing what repair work you need to do, and then being able to have insight into what the lesson is so that you can move forward, and release. So for some people, if you meditate, A lot of people find meditation a good catalyst for working that stuff through. One person in particular I can think of that does a lot of self-forgiveness meditations is Jack Kornfield. You can just look him up. He's got YouTube videos. They're guided meditations and they're centered on self-forgiveness. So meditation's a great tool. Journaling, like you mentioned, is a great tool. Going to therapy. Sometimes these things have to be worked out in therapy. Sometimes we don't have those relationships anymore in our life, but we still have the baggage and we need to work them out. So therapy can be a good way to do it. I'm trying to think of other options.
I know that for me, I wrote a lot of letters and then just burned them, or shredded them. Just got a lot of my feelings out, good, bad, ugly, indifferent,
Right.
and nice, But yeah, that helped a lot. Not necessarily journaling, but just writing out my feelings and saying things probably I wouldn't say face to face.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Writing is very powerful. If somebody is struggling with self-forgiveness and the person, let's say, had died, so you don't get that interaction with them anymore, people can really get stuck in guilt around that. And sometimes it's just a matter of them figuring out how they can form another connection after they've gone through these 4 R's, how they can form another connection to this person that they love that's not here in this world anymore with them because they're so connected with the guilt. So that's when people get really stuck. And it's like, what other connection can I begin to make and strengthen? And so maybe it's figuring out a way to honor them. People have done this in a big way, with, I'm thinking of the person who did MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. She honored her child with forming this organization. I mean, there's so many ways to do it, but there's the small, simple ways of honoring this person and just beginning to remember the joy you had and have in that relationship with memories, and strengthening those connections to kind of get yourself out of, guilt is the way I connect to this person. And again, sometimes that's means going to therapy. But, guilt, let me just clarify here, guilt is not a bad thing. Guilt is a motivator to get you to do, to hold the space and do the work to release the baggage. But you don't want to hang on to it. It's part of the release. It's only a motivator. And once it becomes something more than that, then that's when it's problematic.
Yeah. When you're speaking about that, I'm thinking about the fentanyl crisis right now in our country and all the young people who are overdosing and all the moms and dads out there and, brothers and sisters of these people who have an abrupt ending in this relationship. And just not being able to have that closure or carrying around guilt of something that they might have said that day or the day before or the week before. I think there's so much around this. And there is a lot of guilt. There is a lot of baggage. And I like what you're saying about finding another connection with that person, because I think we're all touched with this now. We know somebody or a friend of a friend. And I think it's the most difficult thing to be a mom and lose a kid and have that guilt. That's got to be the worst self-forgiveness scenario out there.
Yeah. I can't think of much worse, if anything. Right.
But I think your advice to go to therapy, and you really have to go to therapy for that one. I don't think you can work it through alone because it's so complicated. But I think the same strategies will still work.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody does grieve differently. So there is no, there's no right or wrong. But that's a big one. And so it is nice to have support. There's a lot of support out there now, even, virtually for people that need that. A big resource that I often recommend to clients is grief.com. There's a directory with therapist names on there. There's self-help videos. There's blog writings. It's run by David Kessler, who's a big grief therapist in the community. And then he has a program called Tender Hearts. And that's smaller online, more intimate groups with, grouped together by types of loss. So certainly that would be something somebody could consider. But finding that new connection, honoring that person as a way of, just strengthening and forming something new and reducing that guilt is really helpful. I know somebody that gets up every morning and kind of taps their heart and says, I love you to this person, and that's honoring them in a small private way. And that's all it takes for some people. And so whatever you can think of to help you with that, it's going to be unique to each person.
Yeah, I really like that.
Good information.
Well, Diane, this has been really, really helpful to me. I'm glad that I was able to share some of my examples and how I work through it. And it was great listening to Cheryl speak about her experience as well. And it seems like whatever we're trying to tackle, the 4 R's will work for us, which is really cool.
Thank you guys for sharing, because I think people will really relate to what you spoke about in their own way. So we appreciate that.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. It's good seeing you again, Cheryl. Take care.
Take care,
Take
guys.
care, ladies. Thanks
All right.
again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And just a reminder to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Take care. Cheryl, thank you. Carol and Cheryl, thank you.